Hello. I feel like everyone has been doing corsets lately. Like everyone. And since I have really bad FOMO and I feel inspired, we're gonna make a corset. And it's not like for anything. I just feel like making it because sometimes inspiration hits you when you least expect it. This is the pattern I'm using. It's a Butterick 4254, and we are making this one, I think, because I want to do the boob things. And we're going to try and follow directions. I don't know how well that's going to go, but we're definitely going to attempt to. I usually suck at following directions. What the pattern says, it literally says on here, because patterns will have a list of ingredients, as it were, suitable for obvious diagonals or plaids. This is the top fabric. I just vibe with it. I don't know. It feels very like, my favorite color is orange. So that's what we're using. And then the lining will be this. I think it's cute. The binding will be yellow. And I've got just some duck cloth for the interior build of it. It's gonna be fun or chaos.
The first thing you need to do every single time you are working on something is wash your fabric. That stuff is so dirty. Ask anyone who has worked in a fabric store and it is just gross. And now I tend to iron my patterns on a dry heat setting. This just helps them lay really flat.
I have my mock-up fabric cut out. A lot of people will say that they don't do mock-ups because they are too lazy. But let me tell you, 20 years of doing this, and the most lazy way to do it is actually to make a mock-up. Because if there is anything wrong with it, and you didn't make a mock-up, you are going to be fixing the top fabric, the lining fabric, anything in there. You're going to have to do so much more work than you would have done if you had just made a mock-up. So really making the mock-up is the lazy way to do it. I'm not gonna film it because it's absolutely boring, but I will be back in a minute with our mock-up. And that was the shortest video ever because I cut the wrong piece. I need the piece for D, and I cut the piece for C for the booby part. And because I cut this out 2 weeks ago, it's gone. Found it. It's a secret about me. I don't really like throwing things away. So usually I have like just a bag of like my fabric scraps and paper scraps and stuff that I keep around. Thankfully I did that this time. So now I have the right piece. Yay! So I brought in my wife so that I can try the mock-up. And what I am looking at is really the length of my torso. I have a short torso. With corsets, you want them to be tighter. Like, you want them to be smaller than what your body is because it's going to cinch in your waist. That's the whole goal there. And then I just stitch it on the front because I am going to have a busk here, but I can't see how it fits without stitching that. So it looks good. It looks like it fits well. We're going to get started on the actual thing. Sewing with cats. Sure is fun. Didn't know he was gonna make an appearance. Oh, thank you. That's so nice. Yeah, I just ate pizza.
Let's go ahead and put our interfacing in. This is gonna make our fabric just a little bit stiffer. It really helps.
I have my top fabric. It also has interfacing. I am going to do a different kind of seam technique on this. I'm gonna be doing flat felled seams, which is, it builds on structural integrity. It's like essentially one of the seams is shorter and the other seam folds over and you top stitch that down. It adds some structural integrity. I also have a yoo-hoo, so let's get to sewing our flat felled seam.
Flat felled seams are a little intimidating at first, but once you get the hang of it, they're super easy. You're gonna sew your fabric wrong sides together, and then you're gonna go in and trim the side of the seam that is towards the back of the garment to 1/4 of an inch. We do it towards the back because that is the place where you are bending the most. So you need the most support towards the back of your garment. And now we are going to press those seams towards the back. We're always focusing towards the back. We're gonna fold over the longer side over the shorter side and just press that down, and that helps us really get a lot of support in that seam that we're then going to fold over and top stitch. Now when I fold over, I usually pin that just to help me keep it steady and keep it where I want it. And then we're gonna go to our sewing machine after we pin that, and slow and steady wins the race when it comes to top stitching. You're just gonna top stitch that down. And when you are done with your top stitch, you have this beautiful flat felled seam that you super overthought and is way easier than you thought it was gonna be.
Now I have the outside done on both sides. I'm not sewing these together because I need to put the busk in, but also I need to make the lining and the centerpiece, and I don't know what that's called. I just call it the middle guy. The middle piece is where we're going to be putting our boning and our boning channels in. I'm going to do the lining with the same flat felled seams, but the middle of it is just going to be whatever. It's just going to be seams, because it's not going to be seen. So let's make the lining and the middle, and I'll be back.
I guess 6 minutes into this, I should introduce myself. My name is Hack. I am a 20-year cosplay veteran. I do competitive cosplay. I am most notable on TikTok, but we are moving over to longer form content because it's better. I like it more. It's just a lot more work, but thanks for watching. I don't know. This is weird.
We have 2 pieces of the outside fabric. We have 2 pieces of the lining fabric. And we have 2 pieces of our middle guy, right? We're not quite ready to put it all together yet. What we have to do is make boning channels. You can use the seam allowance sometimes as your boning channels. Where the boning goes, you need to have boning in a corset. It's kind of like what makes a corset a corset. So you need boning channels. That's where this comes in. So this is also, not only is it going to be for the binding on the outside, but it is also going to be used as the channels for the boning. Now what is this? This is bias tape. Bias tape is a strip of fabric that is cut on the bias of fabric where the most stretch is. And then you fold it over and you iron it. I have tools to make my bias tape, and they're not fancy. It literally just folds it over so you can iron it and you just tug it through. We have to put boning in each of these curvy bits. So we need to put our boning channels and each of these curvy bits on the inside guy. Alrighty, so I have my channels pinned. The picture in the directions says there should be, I think, 11 channels on this, and I just feel like then the whole thing is boning and it's not anything else. We're not doing 11 channels. I am doing one for each seam, and then one in the front where the busk is going, and then one in the back where the grommets are going, and that feels more reasonable to me. I just think there is a point you can have too much boning. So let's top stitch this on. Thank you, beans. And then I'll be not putting the boning in yet. That's not what is happening next.
The most important thing you need to remember when putting in boning channels is the boning channels need to be slightly bigger than your actual boning.
All right, so we are on day 4 or 5 of building this, and I'm running out of inspiration. Like, I'm at the point where I don't want to work on it anymore, but I'm going to push through, and we're gonna finish this because, like, we're towards the end of it. What I have to do next, I have my boning channels sewn in. Now we've completely gone away from this. This is not happening anymore. I told you that I would end up giving up, and I'm not good at following directions, but it's because I actually think I'm smarter than the directions. We are going to put in some waist tape. Waist tape is usually twill tape, but Michael's did not have twill tape, so this is ticking tape. I don't know. It's made out of the same stuff that old pillowcases, pillowcases are made out of. And when we put that in, we are putting it in right at the narrowest part. And what this does is it, again, gives more structure because it's gonna kind of take some tension off of that waist point, which is where the most tension in a corset is. When I do this, I'm not sewing it all the way across the corset though. I'm just sewing it in specific areas.
When I sew in my waist tape, I don't want to sew all the way across. I want to focus right next to the boning channels, and I am going to be sewing vertically, not horizontally, just in those little areas to give it a little bit more support. Do not sew over your boning channels. Now also be mindful to really reinforce that stitch. I go back and forth a couple times on that stitch just to make sure it's going to hold really well because there will be quite a bit of tension there. But otherwise it's pretty straightforward with what you're doing.
Now it's time to figure out the busk. We still can't put the boning in yet because we need like a bunch of other stuff. I mean, I guess I could put in the boning, but I'm not doing that yet. I have never put a busk in, and what a busk is, it's a thing that goes in the front of a corset to open and close it. And so I've got two pieces, never done this before, and I think instead of just like, because the pattern that I'm no longer following says that you cut holes and then you use spray check on those holes. I think I'm going to try something different. The sewing machine I have is a Janome Mod 30, and there's a bunch of random stitches on there that I've never ever used. So we're going to try to use an eyelet stitch to kind of reinforce where these little knobs are going to go. I don't know how it's going to work, but we're going to try. That's what we're going to do.
So I was surprised at how easy this was. All I did was I set up for the stitch and I let it run, not just once, I let it run twice to give just a little bit more support to that eyelet because I will be stretching it with an awl afterwards. And again, slow and steady wins the race when it comes to sewing. After that, I just take my awl, which is kind of a leather working tool, and I just poke it through and stretch those fibers out so that I can then stick those little holes from the busk into this, if that makes sense. Now, when you're working with an awl, you do want to be super duper careful because it is super duper sharp. It is meant for piercing, and we don't want to pierce our bodies with it. But once we have our holes in, we can put our busk in.
One of them was really rough to get in, but I got it in. So now I am going to take on this one side where my guys are installed. I'm gonna go ahead and attach my lining. And to do that, I am just going to stitch right sides together. I've got these two combined, the middle guy and the top, but I am just going to right side and stitch down this length so that I can fold it over and have my lining installed.
Now this is when I get kind of stupid because sewing machines are right-handed, they aren't left-handed, but I am left-handed and I wasn't thinking and I was like, oh, I'll use a zipper foot for this, but then I ended up using it backwards and not the way that I intended to, and so don't do this, please. But now I'm using it the right way, which I am using to top stitch and kind of secure that busk into the right area that it needs to be in. And look at me, I did it the right way. Woo, good job, hack. Now I'm going on the other side of the busk and I am marking where those little anchors need to come out, and I am just going to sew where those markings are. I'm also going to backstitch the beginning and the end of those lines so that it's a little bit more reinforced. Corsets have a lot of tension in them, so you need a lot of reinforcement.
Broken needle. You know, recently in one of the Facebook Buy Nothing groups I'm a part of or something, one of those groups, someone was getting rid of a sewing machine because they broke the needle and they said that it wasn't worth fixing. So, let's talk about how to install a new needle, I guess.
So the thing you need to know about sewing machine needles is these numbers do correlate to the type of fabric you need to use. 70 is for lightweight, 80 is for mid, and 90 is for heavyweight. Anything higher than that is for like really heavyweight fabric, but the higher the number, the heavier the fabric that you're going to use it on. And on needles, there is a flat back on them, and that flat back is what you want towards the back side of the thing that the needle goes into. So all you do is unscrew that little screw right there, slide it back in with the flat part towards the back, and screw it back in. It is super duper easy to do. Now you don't have to get rid of your sewing machine, I guess.
We have 2 halves. Feeling a lot better now. Now we can finally put in our boning, and I hope this is enough boning. If it's not, I guess it's not getting done. I didn't have enough boning, and I am impatient, and I just want to get this project done. So what I have done in some of the areas of the corset that don't need as much structure, I'm using this nonsense. Now this is just lightweight boning that you can get at pretty much any sewing and craft store. It's garbage, but I don't have enough spiral steel boning. And I could source it out of some of my other cosplays. That's not what we're doing though. We are trying to get out of that habit because I do that way too much, and then I ruin my cosplays, and then I can't wear those anymore.
In order to cut boning, you need special, like super heavy duty wire cutters to cut this, and even then it's a pain in the butt. Make sure you're wearing protection for your eyes. I've never had it fly off in my eye, but you never know. It can be incredibly dangerous working with metal. And when you put those caps on, use needle nose pliers, 2 pairs. Thank you, Lizard Lee, for that advice, because that's going to make your life a lot easier.
Okay, so I have basted the layers together at the top and the bottom. My concern right now, my biggest fear right now is that I'm gonna put this binding on and it's not going to end up matching up the way that I would like it to. I'm also trying to see like if I need my binding to be bigger, because this is kind of as big as it, I think it's as big as I can make. Hold on, it's not, because I got this big guy. This is, I think, 1/2 inch. This is inch, which will then essentially give me one of these on each side. So I guess we're making more bias tape. Thankfully I have fabric. I thought I was so close. I thought I was right there at the end. I am not.
So to make bias tape, you are essentially cutting your fabric at a 45-degree angle, and depending on the size you need, that will change how wide you are cutting your strips. I would recommend you get a clear acrylic ruler because that makes this so much easier. So we just cut out our strips, and then after that, we do have to sew them together to make them a continuous strip. And you're also going to sew these together at a 45-degree angle so that it like unfolds the right way and works the way you need it to. I don't know the science behind bias tape. I just know that it's at a 45-degree angle, which is the stretchiest part of the fabric. And so, yeah, you should learn how to make bias tape because you can make it out of pretty much any fabric, and it is a game changer in competitive cosplay. If you walk into a judging room with bias tape that you have made and that you have applied the correct way, then that is always impressive to the judges. We're just going to trim our seam allowance so that is about 1/4 inch, and then we are going to iron down that seam allowance so that it lays really, really flat, and that will help us pull it through our bias tape making guy so that we can iron it. My camera died, so I didn't get all of the footage of this, but I just iron it down as I am pulling it, and then I fold it over and iron it again.
I am getting increasingly frustrated and annoyed with it because it's not looking how I wanted it to in my head. And that's just a normal part of crafting things yourself. It's a normal part of cosplay. You have this like really cool idea in your head and it just doesn't always pan out. And that's okay. But it tends to make me really nervous towards the end of a project if it's not looking how I wanted it to look. Because like by the time I get towards the end of something, I am just like, I don't want to do it anymore. I'm done. I'm done. But obviously, you do have to finish a thing in order to have done a thing. But we're just gonna keep trucking along. Hopefully doing some of this stitching will help my brain process a little, because when you are sewing, you have a lot of time to think. We'll get there, it'll get done, and I'll be happy when it's done, and I'll forget about all the shit I went through trying to finish it. I think I just did not give myself enough time. I did not do this in a way that I liked, but it's fine. It's okay. It'll be fine, and I will, when it's done, I'll feel much better. Scene change. So yesterday clearly was not a good day for me to be doing this. And instead of just rushing and trying to get it done, because I was so close to getting it done, because I was so frustrated and annoyed, my wife took me out instead to get away from it, and I did not touch it for the rest of the evening. We feel better, we feel renewed, and we are ready to get this done, hopefully today. So let me show you what I'm doing, because I decided that the way that I was doing the bias tape didn't look very good. So we're just gonna slip stitch the whole thing on instead of top stitching one side down and then slip stitching the other. We're just gonna slip stitch the whole thing. It's whatever, it doesn't take that long, but let me show you how to do that.
So a slip stitch is just a ladder stitch, but not on a plushie, and it's really simple to do, and it's kind of one of those like high level techniques that in craftsmanship competitions always goes over really well. You're just gonna tuck your thread into the fold of your bias tape, and then you're gonna go into the layer of fabric. It does take a little bit of sewing intuition because you have to make sure you're only going through one layer of fabric right next to that, and then you're gonna go back in and slip it through the bias tape again, the edge of the bias tape, and you're just going to continue that over and over and over. Now, I do have to give credit to Taylor, who I don't think cosplays anymore. He was the one that taught me this, and it is a really cool technique. Whenever I see this done on bias tape in a judging room, I am super duper impressed, because it does take a long time. It takes a lot of skill and a lot of technique, but it doesn't have any visible stitches like top stitching your bias tape or stitching in the ditch does, which is really, really cool.
And our binding is on both sides of this. What is next? Just gotta put the grommets in, and then, you know, put our ribbon in to hold it, but like, we are pretty much done. As much as a lot of people really don't like hand sewing, sometimes in the right context, I find that it is kind of cathartic. You're repeating the same motion over and over, and you have a lot more control over things when you're hand sewing. So I don't necessarily regret making that choice to do a slip stitch on the whole thing, because also it looks really good, and guess what? There's no stitches. So let's go put some grommets in.
Now, I am fortunate enough to have a grommet hand press, and that makes this so much easier. I do recommend. They are a little bit pricey, but then you're not hammering grommets in, which I've gotten noise complaints for before, and you just stick the top piece of the grommet into the top and the lower piece into the bottom, and you squish it. No, it's not quite a hand press for me because I'm small and weak, but it still works really, really well. And then the fabric just kind of pops out when it's done.
If you wanted free birth control, as I am clearing out my space to finish this up and to, you know, feel like my space isn't a wreck, I found this. Now, what is this? What is this? What is that? That is a straw. That is a straw that has been cut. That is a straw that has been cut in a specific pattern. Now, my kids are old enough to know not to touch my stuff. If you are my child and you are watching this, I know. You won't fess up to it, but I know. And also, these are not cheap. These are for me. Stay out of my stuff. So, don't have kids. So I put this on in my bedroom, and the first thing out of my wife's mouth was, "You ain't got no boobs, Lieutenant Dan."
Well, you ain't got no legs, Lieutenant Dane.
Yes, I know that.
Because even with the boobs, didn't make me grow them, which is kind of disappointing. I was hoping maybe it would like show something off. Turns out I don't have anything to show off. But it is well made. It is cinching my waist. It looks cute. I just look... Well, I guess I just look like me without a bra. But it is done. It is complete. Let's... I just ate chili. So maybe next time I will use a different pattern. Or maybe next time I'll grow boobs. Is that possible in your 30s? Like, I know I don't have any, but man! Alright, now that I'm out of that sensory nightmare, what have I learned from this process? Don't put on a corset right after you ate a whole bowl of chili. That's the most important one, I think.
But I actually learned quite a bit about the cycle of validation in our society. In this timeline, we want instant validation, we want things done quickly, and we want to get attention for it quickly. And this project took me 2 weeks from start to finish between filming and editing, and it was a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be. And so when I started getting towards the end, I was getting increasingly frustrated with everything, and I just wanted it to get done, which meant that I was starting to cut corners and I wasn't being mindful of what I was doing, which led to quite a few mistakes and a product I'm not happy with. I guess sometimes we just need to go to the bar and look at the parking lot geese to feel better about things and slow down.
Realistically, thank you for sitting and watching this video. This is my first really long format content video thing. And in this process, I have had to learn how to use Adobe Premiere. I have had to learn how to use Illustrator and Photoshop and all kinds of stuff. So this was a huge learning experience for me, and I'm going to continue learning. I want to help. I want to help people feel more confident in sewing, whether they're a beginner or a master. There are experiences that we all share. And there's imposter syndromes, and there's experiences that are just universal when it comes to cosplay and sewing and creating. Today's video was brought to you by Beans. And you. Like, subscribe, comment, share it with your dog or your cat. With the TikTok ban maybe possibly a thing, it is more important than ever to support your favorite content creators so that we can keep doing this. I'm also, I will link in the description, I have opened up a Patreon. Right now there's not much on there. I'm considering doing a Discord in the future and monthly streams, but I haven't quite gotten that far yet. It is a pay-as-you-go, so you can support me with $1, $3, or $5 a month. Anything helps, but if you can just like, share, comment, subscribe, whatever, that helps massively too. Oh, thank you, Soren.